I stopped the first tape on culture powers, 14 culture powers, at the point of solution cultures. Didn't quite finish it. Uh, what happens? Each culture is willing to call a solution only things that perpetuate its deepest problems, which means that there's some benefit, usually an unfair benefit, that some part of society is getting that requires certain things not to be solved, and so they pay for and they foster thousands and millions of proposals in other directions because that protects their hidden benefit they're getting. So in America, it's the rich guys paying for great schools in their neighborhood, and then the property tax being used so that poor people don't get any schools at all. And this allows the rich guys to pass on their wealth to the next generation and their leadership position to the next generation. And that's what they want. And that's the benefit that they're getting by pretending that money has no impact on education, which they pay for. They pay for studies to show that. And Europeans and East Asians look at these shitty performances of Americans in every standardized course imaginable and say, what you bought is early death by your 1% elites, 7 years earlier than Japanese and Nordic European elites dying, and then having to be terrified about your kids when they're 30 minutes late for anything because of all the crime in your society. And so you've developed a really crummy lifestyle and way of life for the whole population of your country for the sake of some big houses. I mean, it's just such a bad deal. You 8 more bathrooms for the sake of worrying about your kid being killed by any of 250 daily operating serial killers. Only Americans, only in America. If George Washington only knew, but he owned slaves, so what the hell would he do? Um, so solution cultures are where you undo this, where you find the hidden greed and good that's being disguised underneath hundreds of solutions that do everything except attack the root cause, that distract people from the real root cause. And so you undo that, and it's really tough cultural work because you have to uh, demystify people who have spent their whole life being blinded to the greeds that they inherit. Um, However, it does have tremendous power when you do that because you can do two things. You can take parts of society that have been abused and give them genuine motivation to work hard, which they never had before because the system was stacked in so unfair in a way. And then you can take the elites that are dying 7 years early and you can get them to live 7 years longer. Um, so it has tremendous benefits, but it takes people of great courage and tenacity to do. Then we have extreme products extrapolations. This is the most fun way to get a bunch of executives to realize they don't know what they're doing in a foreign market. And you get them together for 3 days, you give them all some money maybe, and they go out and buy products and services, or they take photographs and do a kind of anthropological participant observation of strange products and services that sell well in this market, but that wouldn't sell at all in our market. And then at dinner, amid drinks and wine, you have them present these outrageous products and services, sometimes even hiring them to come and perform themselves in front of you. And you laugh and you can't believe it. And boy, and then you extract principles of this market and its consumers that make these viable products here, even though in where I grew up, they would never be viable. And then after 2 or 3 days of building this model, you then have all the participants design a new product or service that fits all the dimensions of this model of this local market. And within 3 days, you can take executives who are arrogant and imperialist and Harvard educated and blind to their own feelings and the feelings of other people, psychopaths, and you can get them really excited about and understanding that this market's different than me and my people, and it operates differently, and I'm going to have to map out all these differences if I'm going to succeed here. A tremendous revolution in attitude in just 3 days. I know of nothing that competes in terms of fun and intense emotional memory and power. Culture assessment and fix events. The problem is people don't have any way to assess cultures. And they use these stupid 8 Hofstede dimensions, which are 50 years old and based on the hypothesis that IBM employees in Korea 50 years ago were representative of the Korean population. Right. And it's pitiful, and you got 5,000 Academy of Management lazy professors copying those 8 dimensions because it came from a big N data sample. If the sample is biased, it doesn't matter how big the N is, you idiots. If any of these professors absolutely knew any statistics, I taught at the University of Chicago Department of Statistics within their business school. So I just When I was in high school, I blew past these idiots from Harvard and Chicago and Berkeley and Stanford who graduate from business schools with this multiple regression crap that they don't understand anything about at all. It's just Dr. Deming taught his seminar once in California and had these Stanford grads there from their business school who tried to correct his statistics understanding. And he had this expression caught by the camera of, a combination of pity and anger in every feature of his face that would make a wonderful new kind of Japanese monster. It was just, you guys have reached a level of arrogance, stupidity, and deludedness beyond anything that I have ever seen before. So culture assessment and fixing, you start with 64 dimensions of culture. And I do that to be gentle on people who have been trained by these 8 idiot dimensions from Hofstede. And then after we get them comfortable with 64 dimensions, I move them to 192 dimensions. You characterize the culture of an iPhone 4S and a Galaxy 3 and their users, all 3 of those. At the level of 192 dimensions, you can predict sales, you can predict pricing, and new features and new versions. And that's money. Cultures of devices and cultures of business practices. This is where I'm talking about assessing along 64 dimensions or 192 dimensions of a culture instead of along 8. And you characterize the culture of a product or device. You characterize the culture of its users. You characterize the culture of its competitors. You look at the interactions between the competitor and the users and your end users along 64 or 192 dimensions. Boy, you do that, you get money. And we got executives all over the world where you go beyond the number 8 and they can't handle it. Their brain is too small for any number bigger than 8. You've got Procter & Gamble saying that a memo has to have only 6 points in it because they've never had an executive at P&G capable of thinking 20 things within a 5-minute period. So, I try to deal with people whose brains are interested in 60 things in 5 minutes and 100 things in 5 minutes because they're well ordered and well named. And if you're one of those, you and me are going to get along. But if you're one of those, I can't handle more than 6 ideas in 10 minutes, then you're too stupid for me. I'm going to be dead soon. Look at my body's rapidly oxidizing. I'm going to be burned to a crisp in another 30 years at the most, and I may die tomorrow or tonight. So, you don't have to worry about Richard Green living and bothering you, but you do have to live with the fact that here you are 50, 60 years old, and 10 ideas, 14 ideas, 20 ideas in a 5-minute period overwhelms your brain. How the hell did you get that stupid that late in life? You need to be doing some mental exercises. And God knows that healthy organization people following you as a leader. Jeez. The cultures of genders, errors, and venture. Boy, you go to business, you realize it's a male farm of monkeys. 90% of the behavior you see in any 5-minute period is vertical monkey kissing behavior. And it's all, every waking moment in meeting and hallway discussion is acts of obeisance. The little monkey making sure that the higher level monkey knows that he knows I'm a subordinate monkey to you. I saw the vice chairman of General Electric for all of Asia start his speeches at the American Chamber of Commerce in Tokyo with a 1.5 minute peon to how the chairman of GE is so much smarter than he is. Like we really wanted to hear that stuff. But he felt obligated to say that because he had to let the top monkey know that he's a subordinate monkey, even if he's 10,000 miles away in Asia talking to an audience. I suppose a video is going to be posted, and the chairman's ego is so fragile that he's constantly searching the world to see if any of his vice presidents think that they're as smart as he is. Well, why the hell did he hire them if they're not smarter than he is? Moron. Jesus. Americans are so dictatorial and scared monkey. You just don't find confident men in American organizations. Just everyone's a little terrified monkey. It's like Chinese leaders, always worried about revolution from below. So there's so few leaders, especially in America, outside of the weaknesses of their gender. And this tells you how to wrap them around your little finger as toys. As soon as you apply feminine tactics and methods to a system, all the American manager competition falls by the wayside. They can't handle it. They can't even imagine where you're coming. They've never seen that. They've never imagined that. How do you do that? I went to General Motors. An EDS had sold nothing for 2 years to General Motors. Nothing. 2,000 people sold nothing. And I was a programmer, not a manager. And I solved that problem in 2 months by designing a 1-day feminine meeting, not a male meeting. So instead of big PowerPoint slides showing how our headquarters building looks like a male genital organ and how our sales increase last year looks like a male genital organ, I had no slides. And I told the audience that I'm the only EDS speaker you're going to hear today. And I am already, after 15 seconds, 3/4 through with my comments to you today. We're going to listen to you, the customer, today. We are not going to tell you how great we are. You're going to tell us how great you, GM, the customer, is. We're going to learn your greatness today. You're going to teach us your greatness. We're going to take notes and learn it. And by God, at the end of the day, we're going to be more humble, we're going to be smarter, and we're going to respect you more, and you're going to like us better because we've learned and listened to you. And they loved it. I got a standing ovation. That was my first 30 seconds of comments to any GM group of 400 managers, and I got a standing ovation. We caught it on video and showed it to Roger Smith, the head of chairman of General Motors. He loved it too. Ate lunch with him the next week. That's trivial. I mean, it's a bunch of male monkeys. You treat them as male monkeys, and you can run circles around. You try to find an executive in your organization who's not just a male monkey. Insult his car or one of his toys. See whether he hates you for the rest of the day. Cultures of organizations and nations. This is really something I almost dealt with above, but our default image of what a culture is national cultures. And so we ignore the cultures of engineers and the culture of MBAs, the cultures of users, the culture of devices. And that's really, really dangerous and stupid. National cultures are a vanishingly small fraction of what we have to deal with in terms of culture forces at work. The cultures, definitions and uses of cultures. People change how they define culture based on sneaky uses that they're trying to put it to win some advantage for themselves. So they'll say my culture is very conservative in the first part of a paragraph, and then they'll switch that my conservative is very liberal in the second part to counter something you wanted to do because they want to win. You got to track this, that their definition of their culture varies depending upon whether they want to agree or disagree or block something you're proposing. So you can't go around taking people's statements of definition and uses of a culture honestly. It's tactics. Woo! Operations on cultures and tools. You cannot handle a culture without tools for handling the culture. And it is not some little tiny machine with a lever here and a lever there. It is everything, and it's largely unconscious and invisible. And without tools for the vastness and tools for making visible the invisible, you're not going to even see it's there, much less change it. Traits and dimensions of cultures. They're the same thing. Dimensions of cultures are simply traits we want to observe rather than use. They're not useful to us, but they're important to observe. And then traits that we call traits of a culture, strength, weakness, unity, tightness, looseness, those are things that really have big impact on what we're doing, and so we prioritize them. And so you have a little matrix with traits of culture, which are the dimensions that have really big practical impact for what we're trying to do. And then you have dimensions of cultures, which are observational because they don't really have a big impact on what we're trying to do. They have a background contextual impact on what we're trying to do. They're the landscape in which we try to get these other things operated on. Then you have types and social processes of cultures. The dimensions and traits of a culture don't appear in every social function of a person. You'll have some dimensions that appear in economic life and not in political, not in cultural, not in social change life. You have some dimensions that appear when you try to change things, but not in economics, politics, or culture that continues repeatedly. So where in social functions of an individual or a business unit or a corporation or a nation, where in the social processes of any of those units, size scales, a dimension or trait appears is different. They don't map into all of their culture. Japanese are very individualistic in academia and very communal in economics. And you can map in more detail in that in this 64 social processes. And then what's the importance of that? Types of culture are moving the appearance of traits within social processes so that an individualistic trait in this social process type moves into this economic type or this political type or this social change process type. And then finally, powers and high performances of culture. Once you realize that selves, cultures, and high performances are all the same thing, and therefore that a culture is just a high performance of heavily practiced shared routines between a group of people, and a self is just a set of heavily practiced routines between you and everybody about how you behave, then you realize how to create high performances. High performances are just super culture, more practice of more routines, till they're more effortlessly done.